I knew it.
No,
There it
no
goes.
audio.
Okay, yay. Good afternoon and welcome to Titan Talk. It took a second. It was hilarious.
No audio again.
So we appreciate you guys for joining us today. Today I've got myself, Lieutenant Coop, and I have Lieutenant Shaughnessy with me today.
Again.
Captain McFarland is still out on vacation, so we will shame him when he gets back and give him a hard time for that. But today you've got us, and we're going to be doing a interesting, not interesting, I would classify it as a informative show. So we're talking a little bit about use of force today. And we're just going to give some basic ideas of what we classify use of force. During that, we're going to be giving some intro into what to do in certain situations and how to act and what to look forward to. And then, again, what we classify as use of force to make sure that everyone that we talk to and that works with us understands what a basic use of force is, because there's some confusion on that. There always has been, and there probably always will be. And so we want to make sure that we can kind of cut some of that out. Suzanne says, "Oh no, it's Shaughnessy again."
Oh man, dang it, this guy.
So
They
thanks for
open it up
joining
and
us
they're
today,
just like,
guys. We appreciate it so much. But we're gonna hop into it now. So use of force. This one is always one that I have always found interesting doing this for a living, because it varies so widely from what people will consider a use of force, whether it be someone that I'm talking to that has never done this or someone who's been doing this for 15, 20 years. There's a vast difference between what the expectation is versus what a reality is. And so I've come to learn in my time here that use of force can be something very, very small to something being very, very big and being exciting and scary and detrimental to being something as small and I'd say time consuming. You know, it takes a lot of paperwork to make sure everything's done correctly and everybody understands what's going on, but it's really simple.
That's what I think would be interesting is just from somebody that doesn't do this line of work or anything, what they would think a use of force would be. Because if before I started in this line of work, I would have been like, oh, it's whenever three people are on the ground tackling one person. But then you don't even think about the paperwork that follows after it and all that stuff. But now that I'm in this line of work and I'm in the position that I'm in, I'm able to, have a whole different aspect of it.
No, and again, talking about use of force and paperwork and stuff, our version of that is going to be different as well from law enforcement. And so that's something to consider when we're talking about our version of use of force. This is specifically to us. This isn't to take into
as supervisors that would investigate a use of force if it were to take place. Right. For security. Yeah.
And so those are going to be different from us versus law enforcement, EMS, all of those guys. And it's going to be different from company to company. There's things that you got to have an understanding too, that not every company is going to view use of force the same. I think that there should be some things that line up from company to company, but there's probably some things that we take a little bit more extreme on how they're handled or how that interaction goes than some other companies would.
Right.
And it's not to say that one's better than the other or one's right and one's wrong. It's just a different approach and how you handle that type of situation. And
obviously, as like a private entity, as a private company, you're going to make the decisions on ultimately what you want your employees to do. From a legal standpoint, I think that law enforcement.
But it takes more than that too. I think it's more than it's just a legal standpoint. There's a consideration of what the clients want as well.
Right.
Because when you talk of use of force, we watched a video a while back of from a Walmart where an individual was trying to cash his check and they weren't able to. I don't remember the reason why. It's been a little bit since we've seen the video. And so, he was unable to cash his check for whatever reason, whether it be the check wasn't valid, the funds weren't there, or he didn't have the proper IDs, or whatever the case was. He wasn't able to procure his funds.
Right.
And so the guy goes off, just absolutely loses his mind. And during that, he destroys, they've got like 2 or 3 little stands up there of
like cash registers and display stuff, candy bars, all that stuff.
Credit card stuff and all that. Yeah. And he just starts destroying stuff, rips the credit card machine off the counter, drops all the display stuff.
It was a full mental breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely just loses it. And in there, in that particular, that has the potentiality of going from a very basic use of force all the way upwards of a full-blown fight trying to get this guy into handcuffs and OC deployed or baton or whatever the case may be. And in that version, with that particular video, the officer stayed away and kept this individual from moving from that area and harming somebody else.
Right.
I think in the original video when we watched it, we said that the only thing that I personally would have changed is I would have tried, if I was that guy, I would have tried to get the cashier away sooner.
Yeah.
and then tried to coax the guy outside. And that's probably where I do it, because once I get him outside, it is what it is. You know, PD will get there and they'll handle it the way it is. But when you're looking at that type of a scenario right then and there, I mean, he's destroying property, and that's all insured. So as long as the police have been called and I can keep him from harming himself, me, or any other individual, I don't really have a reason to go hands-on.
Right.
You know, if he starts attacking me, or he starts going for a cashier or another member of the
Yeah,
public,
and I
or
think
something, that's different. Now we've got to escalate that. But if it's strictly to the property, that's all insured. Does it cause an inconvenience to the store? Absolutely.
Right.
But I would much rather have that small inconvenience to the store and to the insurance company, rather than force a subject into what could be a bigger altercation.
Yeah.
Altercation.
Because I mean, you have somebody who is, you know, not hurting anybody, nobody's in harm's way or anything, and then you are, if you were to go hands on with them or anything like that over you know, like you said,
Something
insured
small.
property, then now you are putting your life, this person's life, and anybody else around's life in danger. Because once you rile that person up, if they win against you, they're going for anybody else. That's
because now they've got that
you know?
vote of confidence of, well, I just beat the security guard. I can take
Exactly.
anybody in this.
And I think that's a huge misconception that people get when entering this line of work. You know, especially in some of the areas that we're in, where, you know, they think security is able to just grab, you know, bouncers,
Yep.
like that style, and that's just not what we do. I mean,
Even then, if you notice, not to get off topic, but even not off topic, but not to change the subject from stores to bars, you'll notice even in bar situations nowadays, they're less likely to actually grab you and throw you out.
Yeah.
You know, now they've moved into more of a tactic of surround you with 3 or 4 bouncers and to funnel funnel you out the door, rather than go hands on. Now, if you start putting hands on people, then that's different. Then they're going to physically grab you and, you know, heave you out the door.
And I mean,
but even in that scenario, they're starting to get away from an unneeded physical altercation.
Right.
If they can get you out the door without doing that, they generally don't. And most places don't do it.
I've had countless times where it's somebody having a mental breakdown or they're upset about something, but they're damaging all that stuff. I'm happy to stand by. You know, I don't want to put myself in a situation where we're gonna have to fight. And I think that in that video, we're not gonna name the company that he worked with.
Never.
But that's the style that they do.
Right.
You know, and
But see, I don't think
I totally.
I don't disagree
say
with
it's
it.
a great way. It's I say it's a great
don't
way.
disagree in that particular situation. I don't think the only thing, like I said, and I'm pretty sure I said this during when we did the video for it the first time. The only thing I would have changed that was different is I would have told the guy, the employee behind the register, sooner to leave.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I would have changed. I would have let him continue to do what he was doing. I would have got the employees away sooner, and I probably would have started trying to find a way to non-confrontationally get him to go outside.
Right.
'Cause if I can get him outside, then he's really not a problem anymore.
No, and I tell people in the training class all the time whenever I stop in. Luckily, Sparks will allow me to give some 2 cents every once in a while from stuff that I've learned in the field. Obviously, he's a phenomenal phenomenal. No, he's a
Take your
great
drink.
instructor. He's awesome. And he's got the law enforcement background, but for working security and seeing all that stuff, we can give the standpoint of how we want our officers to deal with certain situations. So I think it's really cool that he allows me to go in there and teach some of that. But I always tell people that the best weapon you're going to have on your belt or just on your person at all is going to be your words, your voice. And
I saw something, I can't remember what the movie's called. And if anybody knows the reference, please let me know what it is. But there's there's a guy, he goes into a sandwich shop. He's called Coach. And he goes into a sandwich shop. And there's these kids in there, and they're causing a ruckus, and they're being rude, and, you know, they're telling everybody off. And so he starts ordering a sandwich, and they get in on him. And they threaten him with violence. You know, the one pulls out a knife and goes at him, and he
I know what you're talking about. It's the...
I can't remember the name of the movie, but he disarms the kid and stuff like that. And then he goes, and he's having a conversation with him, and he goes, throw something at me. It's got to be quick. It's got to be witty. It's got to be this and that. And the kid just yells, you know, an obscenity at him. And he goes, no, you've lost it. And he goes, the real fight is up here in the gray.
Oh, what is that?
And
it's in UK. It's in the UK, right?
Yeah,
They all
yeah.
have English accents.
I can't remember what it's called now. But
I'm gonna
it's
find
one
it.
of those, when I think about a use of force, or when I think about when I'm interacting with somebody out in the field, whether it be someone who's irate or somebody who's just upset because of something small or something large, I think about that line is adults have that fight in the gray.
Right.
You use your brain, you use that gray matter, because that is the biggest tool that I have to my advantage is right there.
Yeah.
Where if everything else is the last case for me, my gray matter, that's number one tool.
Right. Well, and I think it's also learning specific ways to say specific things. Like I have a lot of people throughout KC that I've dealt with so much that to get them to like cooperate, I don't even have to, get loud, get aggressive or anything. I'm just like, hey man, what's up? Like what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. It's just,
and that's the thing,
as long as you stay calm, because they will say the worst things.
Oh yeah.
Humanly possible.
I've had some real doozies.
Yeah, exactly. But I always tell people that they're not yelling at you. They don't personally know you.
No, they're yelling at
your uniform.
Yeah.
Or like
they're
the
mad
situation.
At the situation.
Or something like
They're mad that somebody's there to tell them that they're not supposed to be doing something. And so it's not that they're mad at you.
Yeah.
They're mad at they're mad at the idea of your existence, of you being there as a
Right.
security or law enforcement or in an authoritative presence. That's what they're upset about.
Yeah, and I think that's important because the first couple times that I got any of that stuff said, I was pissed. I was mad. I was like, oh man.
I remember my first interaction with it was in an apartment complex. My first job, excuse me, and I was dealing with one apartment in particular that I was at probably almost every day for a noise complaint. He wouldn't stop, he wouldn't shut the music down at 10 p.m., which was quiet hours, and so every day I would have to go knock on his door and tell him, hey, turn it down 3 for me. Just 3.
Yeah.
Everybody upstairs and downstairs and all around can hear it. Just turn down 3 levels for me and we're good. That's it. Every day. And it finally got to the point where he opened the door one time and he went off on me. Told me off, and you want to talk about obscene, dude. This guy had words that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And how he's putting them together and everything. And I was like, I get it, dude. You don't like that I'm here.
Right.
You don't like that I'm knocking on your door because you're being loud and it upsets you. But here's the thing, man. There's an easy solution. Just turn it down. If you turn it down 3 notches, I don't come back.
Yeah, and I
it's
think
super easy, and there's no reason for me to yell at him. There's no reason for me to get angry. It's just, look, I get it. I completely understand. I wouldn't want somebody knocking on my door at 10 p.m. to tell me, I wouldn't want it. The only reason I'm doing it is because of this, and there's an easy solution, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And guess what? You'll never see me at 10 p.m. again.
Compromising. I think something that I had to learn going quickly to patrol was that the aggressive demeanor is not always, like most of the time, just treating whoever it is like a human. That's going to get you the better reaction that you want. And I think a lot of times,
I remember telling NEO officers when I was assisting more in training, the number one thing, and even now when I do it, when I go in and talk to people, they'll ask me for advice. And I always tell everybody, I said, the biggest thing I can tell you is when you're talking to somebody, talk to them like you'd expect law enforcement or security to talk to you. You see those videos all the time where people get lippy with the cops or vice versa, and the cops get lippy with somebody else. And I was going to say, would you want a security officer walking up to you and going, hey, listen here, you don't,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want someone talking to me that way. So when I approach somebody, I always go, hey, man, my name's Josh. I work for Titan Protection. And I talk to them like a human being. I talk to them like a regular, me talking to you person to person, because that's my expectation.
Right.
I would expect somebody to come up to me and talk to me like an adult and say, hey, the reason I'm here is for this.
Yeah.
Let's find a compromise and
Right.
work together, because most of the time they're expecting you to come down and be that jerk.
Yeah. And I think, Boss, I think I might have mentioned this on one of my podcasts, but just he gave me the best advice that I still use to this day with every situation. What?
I don't think the movie is called Gray. I don't think so.
No,
'Cause Liam Neeson isn't in this one.
No, somebody look up the main character of
I think it's
that motorcycle club. He's in it.
no. I think no. I don't remember. I think it's. I want to say. I know I saw it on Netflix.
It's got Jax from that motorcycle group.
I think it's. Yeah. It's The Gentleman.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
That's what it is. Because I knew it didn't have Liam Neeson in it. The guy can look like him, but I can't remember what his name is. This is the guy. This is Coach. I don't have a picture of him for you guys. I'm sorry.
yeah.
But that's the
No,
guy.
I've seen the clip
Yeah.
where they pull out the knife or whatever. And
Yeah.
he's just like, come on.
It's a good clip. I mean, great thing.
Right. I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? What was I talking about before Coop interrupted me.
Now you know how I feel.
Dude, I can't help it. What was I talking about? I was talking about something.
No, The Gray is a wolf film. That's a good film though. Good movie though.
Anyway.
Voss.
Okay, let me ask. Oh yeah. Okay, I got it.
Voss.
Whoever that was, thank you.
That was Brant.
Okay, that was Brant.
Brant.
Brant. I'll see you in like an hour. But no, the best advice that he gave me is approach everybody the same way.
Yeah.
Just, calm. What's up, man? Or what's up? You know,
Yeah.
not a man. And from there, they can depict on how it's going to go.
You're good, Gary. No worries.
You know, just the way that they respond right there tells you exactly how that interaction is
Yeah.
going to go. Because you might be walking up, you don't want to go up to them aggressive, like, "Oh, what are you doing here? What you know, you need to leave."
Yeah.
Instead,
'Cause you're gonna
because they
set
might
the
just
tone.
be waiting on an Uber, and they're just going to tell you, "I'm waiting on an Uber."
Cool.
And at that point, you're like, "All right, cool."
Appreciate
Then
it.
you go update the client or
a good night.
whoever it was that you called you, you get out of there.
Yeah.
You know, it's super easy. But let me ask you this: what would you classify? What would you call the line where it becomes a use of force?
So for me, and this is me personally, for a use of force, anytime I've got, anytime I have the beginnings of a use of force to me is anytime it's not when they're irate, but when the beginning of property damage starts, that's the beginning of a use of force for me. Anytime that if I've got it, if it's non-confrontational, right? They're just being an ass.
Right.
If I've got to like, hey man, I need you to leave. You got to come with me. That right there is a use of force for me, because this is my use of force. This is, hey, you need to leave.
Right.
And it can be as simple and as small as, you know, a hand on the shoulder saying, hey man, it's time to go. That's a use of force, because I have now put force on this individual to leave. Maybe it's not much, but it's still a version of force. I wouldn't classify it a use of force if it's all verbal. You know, if he's just sitting here and they're throwing obscenities at me and telling me that I'm going to hurt you or whatever, that's great. You're not the first to tell me, you won't be the last. I understand you're frustrated. But if I can get them out the door without actually touching them, and it's just them yelling at me, I don't think that's a use of force, personally.
Right.
Now, if they've destroyed property, yeah, that's a use of force, like that.
Yeah.
But for me, if they're just yelling obscenities and they're just being rude, that's not a use of force. If I can get them out without any confrontation, without anything more than that, that's not a use of force. Anytime there's destruction of property or anytime my hand touches them, that's a use of force.
So in a way of classifying it, so the way that I would say is anytime that somebody is intimidated by the acts that you have done or you have taken control over somebody, you know, like if you're escorting somebody out and you do the Nike swoosh under the armpit to gain control of them.
Absolutely.
And you have to lead them out of the property, obviously that's a use of force.
That's use of force.
But say, you know, you walk up to a property and somebody is going around in their bag, you know, acting super, super suspicious. And you would say, get your hands out of your bag. They won't. And they keep looking at you and they quickly pull it out. You know, you go for whichever weapon you choose, right? But you end up not pulling it out. Would you classify that as use of force?
Did my hand touch it?
No, but let's go with they noticed that you were going to it.
That doesn't matter.
You don't think?
Now, I will say in that situation, my hand touches and say I go for my baton. My hand touches and I start to break the retention on my baton, use of force.
Okay. Then
Use of force.
that's what I would go with too.
Now, if my hand, like I said, if I'm sitting there talking and they're doing that, I'll tell you right now, if somebody's digging through their bag automatically, my hand's already on, because I don't know what kind of weapon they have.
Right.
If they're digging through a bag, my hand is probably already on my gun.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't classify it as use of force, because if I can't see what they're doing and they're being real weird about it, and I'm like, hey man, I just need to see your hands. Yeah, man, no worries, and I can't get that from them, then yeah, my hand's gonna be on my gun, and that's not a use of force, because they could still bring their hands up, like, oh man, I'm so sorry, I was looking for my ID, I couldn't find it, cool, and my hand can come off, and it's not, because nothing other than me touching it was done.
Yeah. That's
Now,
fair.
if they pulled out a binder and I went, you know, they pulled out something that was blunt force object, and I grabbed my baton, absolutely, or I grabbed my OC, 100%, or they pull out a gun, 100%. But I mean, if it's just my hand touching it, no. And a big reason for that is because generally my hand sits on my baton. So I do a cross draw. So my baton sits up front. And so my hand actually, normally when I'm talking to somebody, my hands will rest on my baton because it's comfortable. Rather than, you'll see some people that rest their hands on their vests. I don't like that because now my hands are tied up in this area here.
I'll put the thumbs in my
can't.
vest. That's easily to get out.
That's extra motion here to there.
Yeah, that's true.
Versus where my cross draw, my hands are just, it looks like I'm just standing there talking. But if I had to defend myself, I had that quick draw action to it, and I'm good. And my hands don't need to move. It's real simple and basic, and it's something I've trained for.
Right.
So touching the object, touching something on my belt, I wouldn't classify as use of force.
I could see that
Drawing
because
or even breaking the retention. So even if it's just a little tug, like so, say it freaks me out and I got a little tug on it, but it doesn't completely come out of the holster, use of force.
I would agree with that. Because I mean, now that you mentioned it, I've definitely sat or stood somewhere with one hand on my baton and one on my gun, just standing because freaking belt puts this little strain on your back, right? Yeah. And that's also the same reason why everybody puts their hands in their vests and
100%.
stuff like that. It's
It's
relieving, that stuff. So I would agree that the moment you start breaking that retention is when it would start as an actual use of force, one that you would need to
for using tools. Like I said, if it comes to physical though, and it's anytime if it's honestly, it's legit. Just like, hey, I need you to leave. That to me is a use of force because I have now taken. This is me taking control.
Mm-hmm.
This is you need to leave, and it's usually never on the front here, but it's usually when my hand on their shoulder or my hand
somewhere where you can
here,
control
where I
more
can
of
control
their body,
the center mass of their body.
I mean, if you were to go and grab somebody's arm right here, obviously they're going to have.
I mean, it's a tug of war.
They're going to have.
If you've had
they can
siblings
swing
or
around with the
cousins or
other
anything,
arm.
and you do tug of war, you first thing you grab is the wrist.
Right.
I'm not in that.
No.
But anytime, like if I'm escorting somebody or I'm like, hey, it's time to leave, and I touch their shoulder or their anything in this area here, and I'm like, it's time to go. That's a use of force to me because that's me touching them. That's my force saying it's over. We are done with the conversation. We're done with you being here. It is now, it's forceful. You're not time to go.
Yeah.
Because I always follow the principle: ask, tell, show. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to talk to you first, figure out what's going on, and if I need you to leave, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to ask you a couple of times. It's not just you need to leave. You're going to leave. Throw them out. No, it's there's a range of it in there. But ask, tell, show, or I'm sorry, ask. Yeah, ask, tell, show.
Ask, tell, make is what I know.
I say show.
Yeah, I guess show would be like I guess show.
The reason I do that is because I actually knew a bunch of bouncers, and they never say I make him do anything. It's always I've shown him the door, and I'm like, I've seen you show people the door.
I showed him how to fly out of a door. No, I'm kidding.
But
don't do that.
I've always learned it as ask, tell, show.
Right.
I'm gonna ask you to leave. I'm gonna ask you to do what I need you to do. I'm gonna then a couple of times to try and make sure that you understand what I'm asking. I'm then gonna tell you, and I'm gonna tell you a couple of times, and every time I do that. It's 3 or 4 times. It's never just 1, 1, 1. It's always 3 or 4, 3 or 4. And it's actually like 5 or 6, 3 or 4, and that last one is a 1.
When you realize that
when those two don't work and it's time for me to show you the door, it's not an option. Yeah. I've committed to that. We are going outside, and that is the option. That is option 1. When we've gotten to that point, that's it. That's the only option at this point.
Well, yeah, because you can't start a use of force and then just like, oh, sorry, man, I forget about that one.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so then if you have used a use of force, what would be your next steps? What will as an officer, what are you going to do after you use of force?
From my standing, from my years of doing this, before I ever get to tell or to show, when I'm in ask. I'm going to ask you to do something. By the time I touch tell, I've notified backup.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you 4 or 5 times. Legitimately, it's probably 4. Honestly, it's 4 to 8. It just depends on the demeanor going on.
Yeah.
But between those 4 and 8, by the time I get the tell, I've already radioed for my backup for my company, saying, "Hey, I need a secondary and or a third officer because this individual is not listening, and this individual is being physically and verbally." Restraining to me.
Yeah.
They're not listening to what I'm telling you. They're fighting me on it. And so by that tell, I've got backup en route.
And usually
by the time I get to show, PD's been notified.
Yeah.
Period. Because by the time I show you the door, PD is going to be either notified and on the way or walking through the door so I can help you to them.
Right.
But those are the 3, that's how I do that.
Yeah. So then obviously after you've had a use of force, notify your supervisor, PD if they're already on the way, and then
notify the managers.
We got to notify basically everybody involved. Clients, our dispatch will send out
the best thing to do is if you do have the use of force, whether from little use of force all the way to the top. The way I would do that from there for the notification piece is I would notify my supervisors. and I would notify any managers on property.
Yep.
From there, I'd let my supervisors make notifications after that, because once I've informed my supervisors, obviously my supervisors are going to come out. They're going to make sure everything's okay, make sure I did my job correctly. They're going to check in with the managers, make sure that the managers think I did everything correct, get any footage, whatever that needs to be done for that investigation for the use of force. They're going to get all of that information, and then they're going to have a conversation with me afterwards.
Right.
And then I'm going to let them do the rest of the notification when it comes to notifying the full client, which be the guys who sign the contract and stuff like that. And let them notify their bosses, which is the chief, and then go from there. But I make the initial notification and calling my supervisor, notifying dispatch, and then notifying the managers on property of, hey, this is what went down.
Right.
And then let my supervisors handle all the notifications after that.
Yeah, and I think the dispatch part is important because it definitely can.
Well,
help.
see, and here's the thing.
It comes to all of us.
Yeah.
So we can see it.
And that's the thing with when notifying dispatch, because I would call my direct supervisor, be like, hey, this is what happened. And then I would call dispatch and go, hey, here's what happened. Because what's going to happen is dispatch is going to reach out to all of the supervisors. And if there's one closer, you might not know it right away.
Yeah.
But dispatch can go, hey, I was just talking to this sergeant, and he's 5 minutes out. So we're going to send him. We're going to let him know so he can stop by and make sure I'm okay. And then you can head out and relieve him.
Right. And that's the perks of having so many supervisors in the areas,
Yes.
I love it. That any is able to respond, and they're all going to have the same thought process, up the chain of command, no matter what.
So that'd be a kind of a question for you guys in the comments who are watching this now or watching this later. When it comes to a use of force, where would you classify that line? Where does it start? Does it start verbally or does it start physically? What do you guys think? And you let us know in the comments about what you guys view as the starting potentiality for a use of force. Because that's always a good thing that before I ever did this, I never would have classified what I classify now as a use of force as a use of force. It wasn't until I got into this industry and I started doing it and I started learning that I changed. I was like, oh, okay, well that would be, because before I watched bouncers do it all the time, put their hand on the shoulder and it's time to leave. Before I was in this industry, I never would have classified that as use of force. That's just, hey, got the door.
Right.
Being in this industry, absolutely, that's a use of force.
Yeah.
Because I'm forcing what I want to be done on that individual. That's a use of force.
Yeah. And I think another important part is that if you do use force in any way, you need to be able to articulate why you were able to use that force. Because if we come out
necessary.
there, right? If we come out there and we're like, hey, why did you do that? And you're just like, I don't know, it just felt like the right thing to do. That's not true. Not acceptable.
If there's,
you got to have a reason, solid.
I'd say if it's anything more than if you break the when it comes to we go back to talking about using the gray matter and everything. Me personally, when it comes to, if I've got to go anything above a normal conversation, if I've got to start yelling at somebody, I need to be able to explain why I was yelling.
Yep.
Like, that's my view on it. If I'm talking to you like this and I'm like, hey, dude, you need to leave. Like, you need to leave now. And I go past what we normally talk here, that's to me is I need to be able to explain, because my boss, they're going to find out.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, because generally what happens is someone will complain, oh, this guy was too rough. He was mean. He was screaming at me. And my boss is going to call me in and go, why were you yelling? Here's why I was yelling. Here's why my voice went above what it normally does. So I can explain everything. Anything beyond that, I'll have an explanation for everything.
And I mean, I've had times where just talking hasn't worked because they're just talking to themselves or something like that. They're not listening to you. So yelling is that breaking point of getting their attention where you can be like, a quick shout almost, and then you drop back down.
There's a difference between trying to grab somebody's attention and me yelling at them to get out. If I've got to get louder than them to grab their attention, that's one thing.
Right.
If it's like when you're in a room and you're in a party and you whistle to get everybody's attention, that's not the same. But if I'm standing there and they're being non-compliant and they're resisting, and I've got to yell to keep their attention, I need to be able to explain that.
Right.
The reason I had to continuously yell was because every time I talked, the subject talked over me. The reason I yelled is because of this. If someone asked me, why did you initially shout? Well, I had to grab their attention. Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I attempted to talk
that's
multiple
normal.
times, and obviously I wasn't getting their attention. So shouting got their attention.
Right.
There's your reason.
Yeah.
But I don't know, or because I felt like it is never an excuse.
No, I think
that's an abuse of power.
There are times where I've talked to officers, and here's the thing is, like, when people talk about detention, when we detain somebody, as Class A officers in Kansas City, Missouri, we have the authority to detain. Everybody always confuses it with arrest. Arrest means they're going to jail. I don't have that power as a security officer. I have the power to detain you, to police get there, for them to make the determination if you're going to be arrested.
Right.
Mine is the power of detainment. Okay? Anytime you detain somebody, whether it be with or without handcuffs, if I'm detaining you and I'm telling you you can't leave because I want the cops here because of what you've done, I need to be able to explain that that would be a use of force as well.
Yep.
If I'm detaining that individual, I'm taking their ability to leave, that's a use of force automatically. Hands down, no questions, considerations.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are very quick to go, and it's I've seen it industry wide where it's very quick to go to the handcuffs.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Not necessary.
no,
There
it's
are
not
times,
because I've had so
absolutely.
many times where I'm just like, sit down.
Yeah.
That
You know
right there.
Do you know how
is-
many people I've had where I've had to detain them because PD's coming in for whatever reason, and it could be that they're a habitual trespasser, it could be that they've broken a window, it could be that they just, anything outside of assault, anything like that. I've had moments where I've had somebody screaming at each other, manager and random individual, just absolutely going at it. I mean, at it. No punches thrown, but screaming back and forth. And I've had it where, hey man, look, you're gonna stay inside. You're gonna come with me. When we get outside, I'm like, sit down. Okay, and they sit.
Yep.
I don't need to handcuff him. He's sitting. He's waiting.
Right.
That's
There's no threat.
No.
There's no reason to think, oh, now I need to put you.
Yeah,
now I
no,
need to restrain your arms.
No,
There's
don't
just no
get me
reason
wrong.
for
If
it.
and the difference being there is if I get there and they're throwing punches, yeah, he's going in handcuffs.
Right.
Whoever it is
Because
going in
that is-
handcuffs
that's
because
already
that's
aggressive.
assault.
Yeah.
I'm detaining you until the cops get here because they're going to determine if you're going to jail for that.
Right.
But I mean, if it's just an argument, there's no need for handcuffs. Dude, sit down. And honestly, the best case scenario is get out and leave. In that scenario, we've got a manager and a ex customer or whatever you want to call them, screaming at each other, arguing and yelling, and I can get them both separated. My best case is, dude, leave and don't come back.
Right.
Just leave and don't come back.
Yeah.
And
No,
if I can get them to
agree
do
with
that, done. Absolutely done and over with.
Your job, yeah. If you get people to leave, your job's done.
Yeah.
I've had people jump out of windows on me and stuff, and I obviously when they're running, I'm like, don't jump out that window, but they're going to, and if they're out of the property, your job's done.
I had a guy climb out. Then it was an attic that had one of those. This is an abandoned property. We found a homeless guy on the first floor. It was a first floor with an attic that had an exit onto the roof.
Yeah.
We found him. We yelled, "Hey, Titan Security, condemned building, you shouldn't be here." And we hear, "Oh," and he runs. And I'm like, "Where the hell is he going? There's nowhere to go. There's only two ways."
Yeah.
And we're standing at both the entrances. Like, where are you going? And I hear like a ladder drop. And I was like, what the hell was that? One of the guys goes, "There's an addict." And I was like, great.
Yeah.
I'm not climbing up that ladder. That's dangerous. And as we're standing out there, he climbs into the attic and he climbs out. There's a hole on the front of the building, like an attic window,
Right.
but it was broken. He climbed out the hole onto the roof. And I was like, what are you doing?
That's hilarious.
Like, that's so much work.
yeah.
Like, what are you expecting? I'm not following you to the roof. I'm not going to fall. I'm good. Thank you. Then he jumped off the roof and ran. I was like, I'm not
There's
chasing.
no way. Yeah, there's no
Like,
way.
That's great.
That's what happened with mine. My guy jumped out the second story window, and I hear him thud on the concrete thing in front, and I hear him slam into the door, the back door. I was like, "Oh, you hurt yourself enough."
Yeah, like, I don't wanna do anything
I'm
now.
not. I'm not coming after you anymore.
You've already sprained your ankle or
yeah.
whatever.
And not
the
only that, I'm not jumping out a window.
case- Yeah. No.
My job is to clear everybody out of that building,
You've left.
and you've left. Yeah, exactly.
Mind you, it was a way you didn't have to leave that way. You could have left out the front door.
Right.
I would have happily let you out the front door.
Yeah, it's just.
But whatever.
Hey, get out. Okay. Done.
Sure.
That's all. That's all the interaction is. I mean,
And I've had that too, where I'll have that conversation. I'm like, hey man, you can't be here. And the guys, can I leave? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
You want to go out the front door? Or do you want to go out the back door?
Yeah.
Front door. Let's go.
as long as they understand not to come back too.
Yeah.
Those,
no,
those are the ones I enjoy dealing with.
I think it was my favorite was the attic roof guy. I think just I was so caught off guard. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, it was standing,
There's some stuff where you're just like
There's a
in
front-
awe, shock. You're like,
I was like, there's no reason, dude. We would have gladly let you. I wasn't going to arrest you. I'm not going to detain you. I just needed you out of the building. It's
Right.
condemned. They're gonna tear it down. It could fall.
Yeah.
Like I just want you out. I don't want you to get hurt. Why are you trying to make it worse? Like you're climbing and potentially making the potential damage to yourself even worse than. Dude,
Right.
leave.
no, I don't understand it. I never will understand it.
No. So yeah. So guys, in the comments, as you're watching this later, if you're watching this now, in the comments, let us know what you guys think the line for the use of force. Gary gave us one. He goes, I always, excuse me, I've always felt it starts when the individual has decided they aren't going to comply. The problem I have with that one, it's not bad. The only issue I have with it is that I've talked people back into complying.
Yeah.
I've had it to where they've decided that we're not going to comply. I'm going to make this guy's life miserable. And 10 minutes of talking to him, we've calmed down. We're on the same page. And he goes, you know what, man, I'm sorry for everything I did. I'm just frustrated. This is what's going on. And we're talking back, and we've talked back into complying.
Right.
So
I mean, I've had the same situation where you walk up and they start to get aggressive, and then I just, hey, have I yelled at you? Cool, then I expect it back.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk like adults. And those are usually the days that I am a little tired. Yeah. I'm like, I don't have the energy for this. I'm like, dude, I haven't yelled yet, so why are you?
Yeah.
Once you make them feel like a child, then they're like, oh, damn it.
My bad.
Yeah, they're like, sorry about that one.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I get it, dude. You're frustrated, but I'm not yelling at you.
Yeah.
I'm treating you like an adult. I just treat me like one.
But
And
I will agree.
generally-
There's some situations where people have already decided.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are some situations where people have made that decision, and you're not going to convince them otherwise.
No.
Of course, those situations exist.
Yeah.
99%, like I'd say, the 1% of our job that has that decision, it's 1%.
Mm-hmm.
It is 1% of the population, or less than 1% of the population that we deal with. 99% of the people that we deal with, you can either talk them into leaving, or talk them down off into a normal conversation, or you just talk to them regularly.
Yeah.
And be done with it.
I agree.
That's probably 1% or less than 1% that have made that decision. You know what? I'm going to make this as difficult as possible.
Yeah. No, and
they exist.
those are usually the ones that you deal with a lot.
Yeah.
You kind of, the first time that you have an interaction with them, you're like, oh man, like this is aggressive and hostile. And then all of a sudden they're aggressive every time. And you're like, dude, what's up?
Why?
Why are we mad today? You know, what's going on today?
I've had those too, where it's like you'll be talking to somebody, and I know he's angry. I've talked to him 5 other times. He's always
Yeah.
angry. And I walk up and go, why are we angry today,
It's
dude?
the regulars.
Why are we angry
I was
today?
just attacked by a mic.
You attacked it.
That's fair.
All right, so getting into the weather, now that we've had our little spiel about that, it was a good one, though.
Yeah.
Talking about the weather, it is going to be hot all week. We're looking at 90 degrees tomorrow, 88 on Wednesday. It goes down a little bit into the low 80s on Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, with a potential chance of rain on Saturday. Thunderstorms.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can be down with
It
some
says
thunder.
87% chance. So, that'll change tomorrow to 40.
Yep. And then by Saturday, it won't be there.
So other than that, it's going to be hot all week, so prepare for that. Remember to stay hydrated and drink your water. If you're doing for hydration, you're doing it the day before, not the day of. The day of, it's already too late. I think I've said that a bunch.
Yeah, I think you're going to say that every podcast.
I think I'm going to.
Maybe
It's a
once
good
or
one.
Maybe twice.
Dude, look. Hydration. It's all about staying hydrated as he downs an energy drink.
Number 3 of today.
Suzanne, don't buy him anymore, please.
Suzanne, you see the brand before he meets my mic?
Stop. Not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
But other than that, guys, I think we're going to call it. We appreciate it so much for everything you guys do in the field. The last thing I do want to say is don't forget, June 17th, we have the Titan Appreciation Day for the employees. You guys should have all got that. If you didn't receive it, please let us know. We'll get you guys the information. But other than that, I think we're going to call it. We're going to let you guys get back to your day, enjoying your day. Stay prepared for the weather. We appreciate it so much for everything you guys do in the field. It allows us to continue to do stuff like this and to do events and fun stuff. And so thank you so much for everything, guys. We appreciate it so much. But we'll catch you guys on the next one. Have fun and stay safe.
Adios.
Thanks, guys.